Good evening, one and all, and an extremely warm greeting to all the people who are a part of this online webinar. I thank you for saving your valuable time and being part of this webinar coordinated by Nanoland Limited. I am as today being World Environment Day, we have assembled to impart our insight and thoughts to our peers from assorted scientific research fields on learning, imagining, implementing a better future for our beloved world. Nanoland Limited is an eminent research organization situated in Ahmedabad. We are mainly centered around changing climate and are principally into profound research on climate change, particularly climate cooling. We have a pool of research associates with assorted foundations associated with us who work day and night considering our Earth and its atmosphere, analyzing the changes brought in by them on a geological time scale. Now, may I please welcome our dignitaries, Dr. Rajeshkumar Acharya, Chief Scientific Advisor of Nanoland Limited, Ms. Somya Bhatt, Advisor, German Development Corporation, Mr. Karan, Shah, Head, Partnership and Outreach, Civitas Sustainability Foundation, Ms. Diana Yesuraj, Lecturer, Natural and Applied Sciences, University of Dubai, Ms. Ann Thomas, Adaptation Consultant, Kerala, Mr. Jabir Haka, Engineer, Zanzibar Utilities Regulatory Authority. Now, it is my honor to introduce you to Dr. Rajeshkumar Acharya. He's the Chief Scientific Advisor at Nanoland Limited. Dr. Rajeshkumar Acharya, who's leading patent attorney. He's a doctorate in science and specifically chemistry. He's engaged in a lot of research work on climate change. He has consistently guided his research association in speculation past what a normal individual would think. He generally advises his team of scientific researchers in his in-depth knowledge on climate change and related subjects. Now, I might want Dr. Rajesh Acharya to invite every one of our speakers and present the subject of this webinar.
Good evening, all of you. On this World Environment Day, I welcome all of you on the platform of Nanoland. So Nanoland, it is an institution doing research on climate change, and particularly Nanoland believes that it is not a global warming, but in fact it is global cooling. But today we'll not discuss about that climate change, much about it, but we'll discuss today about, particularly we have seen in this pandemic situation that we have to assess ourselves, government and ourselves also. Whether we have done any mistakes in the past, and because of this pandemic, what it is, how to cure. So we'll talk about that today. And I would like to share my presentations. I think it is now visible to all of you, right? Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible. Also.
Yes, Doctor.
Fine. So it is, let's create a non-polluted, healthy environment. People, government, joint approach. We cannot always say that government should do it, and government cannot say that what we can do, it is people has to do. It should be a joint approach. And it is addressing environmental problems. There are air pollution, global climate change, stratospheric ozone depletion, urban air pollution, acid deposition, outdoor pollutants, indoor pollutants, noise. These all are in air pollution more particularly. So where we have to address these problems also. And biodiversity depletion, it is habitat destruction, habitat degradation, extinction, waste production, solid waste, hazardous waste. And in water pollution, it is sediments, nutrient overload, toxic chemicals, infectious agents, oxygen depletion, pesticides, oil spills, excess heat. And particularly in food supply problems, it is overgrazing, farmland loss and degradation, wetland loss and degradation, overfishing, coastal pollution, soil erosion, soil salinization, water shortages, groundwater depletion, lot of biodiversity, and poor nutrition. So these are the all environmental problems which we'll have to deal with. And what are the causes of environmental problems? It is wasteful and unsustainable resources use, environmental costs of goods and services in market prices, and main thing is too little knowledge of how nature works. Actually, we don't know much about the nature, really, very frankly, very honestly. We'll have to accept this fact. And you can see that it is a population growth everywhere, unsustainable resources use, poverty, and excluding environmental cost form, and trying to manage nature. We are trying to manage the nature. And now let us see what are the solutions for this. First of all, we'll have to understand our environment and also practicing sustainability. These are the important solutions that we'll have to. And now let us see that what is the environment. Environment is everything that affects living organisms, that is environment in plain words. Ecology is biological science that studies relationship between living organisms and their environment. With this, we'll have to go further at what is sustainability. In ecology, sustainability is how biological systems remain diverse and productive. Long-lived and healthy wetlands and forests are examples of sustainable biological systems. In more general terms, sustainability is the endurance of systems and processes. And there are some myths about sustainability. Let's check one by one. Sustainability is too hard to understand. No. Sustainable is a synonym for green. No. Sustainability is all about recycling. Sustainability is all about the environment. Sustainability means lowering our standard of living. It is also myth that it is too expensive. And what else? Now, types of sustainability. You can see that. It is environment, economy, society. These are the zones of sustainability. We can learn from this picture also. What are the resources? That is, resources are perpetual. It is renewable resources and non-renewable resources. What are perpetual resources? Renewed continuously on human scale. It is solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, hydro energy, tidal energy, and biomass energy. These are all perpetual resources, never ending. And further, it can be renewable resources which can be depleted or degraded is Sustainable yield, the highest rate at which renewable resources can be used without reducing its supply. That is over-farming the land, leading to soil erosion, clear-cutting forests, and environmental degradation when we exceed the natural replacement rate of the resources. That is groundwater depletion, water pollution. These all are which we have to consider this. And now what is non-renewable resources? Exist only in fixed qualities and quantities on earth. Metallic resources, iron, copper, renewable, these are non-renewable resources. Non-metallic resources like salt, clay, sand, limited sources. And energy resources from oil, coal, oil, and natural gas, which are non-renewable sources. When 80% is gone, it may be too costly to get last 20%, particularly for these non-renewable resources. And what is environmentally sustainable solution? Society. Our lives and economies depend on energy from the sun, and that is solar capital, and natural resources and natural services, that is natural capital provided by the earth. Now, living sustainability means living off earth's natural income without depleting or degrading the natural capital that supplies us. Now, how an environmentally sustainable society grows? Societies can become more environmentally sustainable through dedication in improving the quality of life for everyone without degrading the Earth's life support system. Again, society can become more environmentally sustainable through dedication in improving the quality of life for everyone without degrading the Earth's life support system. And how scientific principles of sustainability, that is reliance on solar energy, biodiversity, nutrient cycling, and population control. These are very, very important things. These are 4 scientific principles of sustainability. And what should be the government initiative? It should give the mission: more green, clean air, clean water, clean energy, clean environment, and vision should be sustainable development, growth and environmental protection, development without destruction, poverty eradication, and green growth. This should be the vision of the government. I'm not talking only for India, but it should be, I'm talking about the government of all countries. This problem is related with our entire world. So each government should have this initiative and this mission and this vision. And sustainable growth initiative, it is forest, pollution, responsible business, and coastal. These are all sustainable growth initiative. And what is forest initiative? Policy for incentivizing tree cover outside forests, partnering in greening highways, railways, bank of rivers, finalize eco-sensitive zones, special efforts to avoid animal-human conflict, voluntary relocation, flora and fauna discoveries, use of technologies like drones, e-surveillance, satellites, GPS tagging for forest and wildlife management. These are all forest initiatives. And what are pollution initiatives? Emission standards upgraded for many industries. Industrial pollution in river reduced by many percentage now. Efforts for pollution control in metro cities. geomapping of hazardous waste generating industries, recategorization of industries based on pollution load, national air quality index should be launched, and sewage treatment plants, it should be launched everywhere, and emphasis on wetland protection. These are very much required for removing the pollution, and I can call it a pollution initiative. Now, what are the other initiatives? It is sustainable sand mining and mineral policy. It is required. This requires rather we should put more efforts. We means we, people and government. And river improvement program is also should be undertaken. And public participation initiative is also required. Eco clubs in schools and colleges are being made active. This is very much important. And I have particularly seen in Japan that the schools are teaching right from the standard 1 students. So how to do this, how to take this initiative for pollution removal and everything. Plastic waste collection as a voluntary initiative. That also I have seen into the Japan where it is taught in the schools. And I think this is too much I have spoken about all this government and our joint efforts. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Acharya. That was a very, very informative and enlightening presentation, and very wise thoughts that you've shared. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would request Ms. Somya Bhatt, being advisor at German Development Organization on Climate Change Adaptation. She's currently working on 2 main projects, climate adaptation and finance in rural India, and enhancing sustainability in tea sector. She has extensive experience in research, strategic planning, project management, building partnerships, and policy mainstreaming in the field of climate change and natural resource management with bilateral, multilateral, government, and non-governmental partners. She holds a master's in environment science and natural resource management, and is part of Lead India Fellowship Program since 2015. I would request Ms. Somya Bhatt to give her presentation.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. So first of all, thank you, Nanoland, for inviting me for delivering this topic today. And I work with GIZ, and I will largely focus my presentation on the work that I've been doing, mainly on climate change adaptation in rural areas of India. And just to give you a basic outline of the presentation, a little bit on the climate change topic, on climate change adaptation, what has been the approach so far, and some way forward. So this slide is just about some facts and figures, which I think all of us know pretty well, about how climate change is affecting different countries, including India, in several ways. And as per records, 90% of the major disasters from 1995 to 2015 were linked to either climatic or weather-induced events like floods, storms, heat waves, and droughts. And IPCC, which is the prominent climate change authority, also indicates that climate change will further increase the frequency and intensity of extreme climatic events, including making newer areas prone to disaster from natural hazards, whereas increasing the underlying vulnerability factors. I will come to that later as well. And that is why how climate change adaptation is relevant for India. A recent report by an environmental think tank also ranks India as 5th most vulnerable country in terms of extreme weather events. And studies have also shown that current level of efforts to slow down global warming will see average temperatures in India to rise by 1 to 2 degrees by 2050. And not only this, it will have a great impact on all sectors, economic sectors, social impacts, and can cause loss of GDP of up to 2.5 to 4.5% as per a report by McKinsey. And So like I think all of us can agree that climate change does have a long lasting impact on natural resources, on economic activities, food security, water, so on and so forth. And largely our mainstream developmental policies or any developmental policy is always targeted towards the well-being of all these sectors, looking at long-term sustainability, whether it is agriculture, whether it is water, whether it is infrastructure. But most of the time, what we see is that both short-term and long-term climate change impacts are generally not accounted for while the policies and plans are framed. And traditionally, these policies and plans have been framed largely looking at historical data, both socio-political, economic, and sometimes weather data, but largely historical and not so much future climate change projections and future scenarios that we have available. So introducing climate change concerns in policy and planning not only secures sustainable development goals, but at the same time, it requires new capacities, new knowledge, of course, additional finance at most of the times, and technologies. So just this slide is again just a very simplistic representation of the very complex world that we live in. So generally, like I said, most developmental policies are targeted towards a certain goal with a certain timeline. And what we want to achieve would be this line, the solid line, but without that would be without climate change. But most of the time we see that with climate change, the developmental goals are largely undermined. And in order to fill this gap, what becomes imperative is adaptation. And obviously, this is a very ideal and a very simple scenario, and the real world is much more complex and much more dynamic. And in order to fulfill this gap, we need sustainable technology, sustainable finance, and sustainable measures, of course, in different sectors. Now, coming again on the topic of adaptation, because I've been working on adaptation for quite some time, and whenever we interact with communities, especially in rural areas, so this is one gentleman in Rajasthan who was talking about that. What do you mean by climate change adaptation? You know, we have been adapting to such things since millennia, and it is part of our life. And he's right in a way. I mean, people have been adapting, people have been making changes to their lifestyle as per the external stimulus, whether it is climate change or other environmental factors. But what is important is to now make it more systematic, looking at both short-term and long-term climate projections, as well as the historical trends, so that the impacts of climate change can be moderated, if not completely negated. So this is just the textbook definition of climate change adaptation, which is largely adjustments in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climate stimuli or their effects, which either moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities at times. But how do we plan for adaptation? So adaptation is largely governed by an understanding of the risk and vulnerability. And this is the conceptualization of adaptation again from IPCC, which says that the climate risk is a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. I'll just briefly go through this. Hazard being any climate-related event, a flood, or any other weather event. Exposure being the presence of a system of interest which could be impacted by such an event. For example, a high value infrastructure at stake, or a low lying area in a district which could be prone to flooding. And then we come to vulnerability, which is again defined by sensitivity and adaptive capacity. Sensitivity is inherent to the system, which means how sensitive a system is to a particular stimuli, whereas adaptive capacity is the ability of the system to adjust, and it includes finance, it includes institutions, it includes also human capacity. And largely when we work on adaptation, we see that a lot cannot be done on the hazard part. We cannot really change the course of a cyclone or a weather event. Exposure can be worked to a certain extent, but most of the adaptation action lies in this sector, in this point, vulnerability, either reducing the sensitivity or increasing the adaptive capacity. And so basically we talk a lot about mitigation and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but even with the even if the emissions were completely stopped at this stage, hypothetically speaking, the damage that is already being done would need to be adapted too. So managing climate risk is likely to be important for sustainable development, also for sustainable development goals. And it is for this reason that adaptation should be an important part of policy response, not only to climate change, but also to sustainable development. And this is just to give you an overview of the existing climate change policy framework in India. This is a little busy slide, but just to take you through it quickly, it talks about at the international level, India's commitment to climate change adaptation, which talks about both adaptation to climate change and low carbon growth path, which is in the form of nationally determined contributions. At the national level, India has a national action plan on climate change with several missions in different sectors, which talk about both climate change adaptation, sustainable development, and low carbon growth. And then in order to translate the national missions, each state in India has state action plans on climate change, which are now being further translated or at least implemented at the district level through district development plans and village level plannings. And this is through the work that I'm doing with the Indo-German Technical Cooperation. We are largely working at the state level plan on climate change. This is just to give you an overview of the kind of activities that are currently being implemented on water security, on sustainable soil management, providing climate solutions to rural communities for adapting to climate change, also low carbon solutions for waste management, and also resilient livelihoods through development of sustainable crop value chains. And the instruments that are used for it are largely capacity development of uh, government stakeholders, NGOs, also community members directly, policy advisory, a lot of stakeholder networking with think tanks and other development organizations, and also creating platforms for different stakeholders to come together and work on priority topics. So this is again a little bit more on the adaptation part. So the approach of GIZ in India, GIZ has largely been involved in the subnational planning on climate change through these state action plans on climate change, which are the key policy instrument or policy guidance to drive climate action in the states. And the steps for doing so are first, because most of the time we don't have a clear evidence of how climate change is actually changing or having an impact on different sectors in the states. So it's important to generate knowledge about future climate projections with whatever level of certainty we have best available in the scientific community. Then strengthening knowledge base on impact of climate change. This was particularly done for water, but because our focus was on water at that point of time, and define how vulnerability and risk on water resources due to climate change, how it can possibly help us in prioritizing adaptation options, and also identify technology needs. The second sort of main focus is around then mainstreaming and demonstration. So other than the research on climate change vulnerability and impacts, this is the step, like a strategic framework that we follow while mainstreaming and demonstrating at the ground level. So it starts with the basic screening, defining boundaries and looking at both past and current climatic trends, then going to the ground and also using data sets from the ground, from the communities, on what kind of perception they hold on both climate change impacts, their other stresses which are linked to environmental or social or economic factors, and then how it is relevant to the existing schemes and policies that are being implemented in the region. Then jointly combining with these data sets, adaptation options are identified and prioritized based on several criteria, like what is the technical and financial feasibility, how well do they address the climate change vulnerability in the region, and how much impact or benefit can they bring for the beneficiaries. And then for demonstration, the most important thing is to integrate it into the existing government schemes and plans. So what And for doing so, one needs to identify additional resources, both in terms of human resources, financial resources, technical resources, and identifying the right schemes where it can be integrated for implementation. This is just one example of one such mainstreaming effort that was done in Bilaspur, Himachal Pradesh, in a small village called Kandrur. So there, the climatic data trend that showed that for the past 25 years, Bilaspur is facing erratic variations in temperature and rainfall, and the district is dealing with several calamities like flash floods, landslides, and also droughts. Combining it with community perception, most villagers also recalled experiencing climate change, also temperature rise and lesser rain in the past few years. And together with that, there are several socioeconomic and biophysical stresses like decrease in surface and groundwater, low water availability from the existing tube wells, no or inadequate irrigation infrastructure, no all-weather roads, and damaging of the traditional water storage facilities, which are called baulis in the region. And that leads to a high dependency on money lenders for short-term coping strategies. So all this indicated towards high vulnerability of the villagers in the region because of not only climate change, but also other socioeconomic and biophysical factors. And then looking at the future projection also showed that Bilaspur, the vulnerability of Bilaspur is projected to increase both towards mid and end century scenarios. And the contributing factors for this is increase in number of drought peaks and flood discharge, and also sensitivity of the current seasonal crops to water stress. So combining all these data sets, both current and future, and also community perceptions, we designed a small program called Watershed Program in rain-fed agriculture dependent communities in drought-prone area of Bilaspur district in Himachal Pradesh. So these are just some of the adaptation options that were prioritized together with the communities and the Gram Sabha in the region. For example, revival of traditional water storage structures, which are baulis, plantations of relevant crop varieties in relevant sites, and also solar fencing in the region to prevent human-animal conflict. And this was also combined with a lot of hand-holding support, training and capacity building programs by experts on both climate change, water conservation, micro-irrigation techniques, participatory management, and importance of water user groups and soil health management. And out of the 23 activities that were prioritized, 18 activities were incorporated in the village level planning in the region. So this is just to give you an idea of the kind of activities and the kind of budget. This is only for 1 year, 2019, 2020, sorry, 2019, yes. For example, solar fencing was implemented through a governmental scheme called Eco Village, and a few other activities were implemented through Narega, like vermicompost sheds and plantation work. And this is just to give you a community perspective from the region. So this is Prabha Dayal, who is a resident of the village, and he talks about that how I'm a farmer in the Kanjur village, and his farmland was near the Satluj. And during monsoons, the water levels in the river Satluj rise and erode the base of the farmland. And this would lead to a lot of erosion. So the planting of trees is expected to provide fodder for cattle and livelihood opportunities for the landless laborers. And under this project, I raised the issue during village meetings and in the panchayat. The concerned farmers joined me and we got approval for the plantation on the forest land. And the funds have been released by the district administration, and the plantation drive began in June 2019. This is just another community perspective from an Anganwadi worker on the repair of traditional Bauli structures in the region, that how they understood climate change and water resource, and they got the confidence and also the information to actually discuss it in the village panchayat and get the traditional approval for, and also releasing of funds for getting the traditional Bauli revived. So these are just few other examples of similar projects that have been implemented in other agroclimatic zones of India. This is in Tamil Nadu, ecosystem-based climate proofing of watershed. And these are some other community perspective results. This is from West Bengal. from an integrated farming system that was implemented in flood-prone region again. And this is again how it was mainstreamed in the Gram Sabha planning. This is the Sarpanch speaking that how he would like to replicate the activities through Narega and other schemes at the village level. This is just one other example again from Tamil Nadu, which was done with the MS Somya Foundation in Kadlur district, where the main climatic stresses identified were erratic rainfall and increase in summer temperature, which led to salinization of land and groundwater and less agriculture yields. So the main activity over there was integrated fishery farming, introducing saline tolerant plants, and also developing ponds to grow brackish water fish, and also planting of mangroves on the bunds. And this was actually upscaled by the International Climate Fund called the Adaptation Fund Board, and for $0.7 million US, but for a similar site in Andhra Pradesh. This is again from the same site, another community perspective by Indrani Pakrisamy from MGR Nagar village, Tamil Nadu. And she talks about how often they used to spend the whole day in mangroves to handpick fish and crab. But through this support, they set up a nursery and raised mangroves. And now they are able to earn some money and also increase their livelihood opportunities. These are just some other examples of how different activities were integrated in other states through different government schemes and plans. I will not go through them. I would just like to focus a little bit on this slide, which is why mainstream adaptation at lower levels of governance. So in India, there are a lot of climate schemes and programs that are that have a push from the topmost policymakers and also from the national level, from the state level. But most of the time, the implementation on ground becomes challenging. But having said that, implementation at the village level is also the most opportune sort of area for implementing adaptation, because the convergence of all the funds and schemes happens at the village level. It also supports the decentralized planning of Government of India. There is a huge potential for piloting new activities, new measures, and then later on replicating it in similar conditions, similar agroclimatic zones. And also for adaptation, most adaptation options require local implementation before they can actually be recommended for large scale scaling up. And it also helps in translating the priorities and the activities that are either at the national level in different schemes or at the state level in, for example, in State Action Plan on Climate Change. So that was about the local level planning. This is just one other capacity development approach, which goes hand in hand with the mainstreaming and policy formulation. So a lot of work and investment happens on capacity building for decision makers, which we can call sensitization program on climate change adaptation, on the urgency for developing sustainable solutions. Then very targeted sectoral programs for technical officers and engineers, and then practical implementable projects and programs for district level officials, and then also developing a cadre of master trainers who can run these training courses in the future as and when required. This is just one other slide on different multi-stakeholder dialogues and technologies. For example, strengthening capacities for media for enhanced reporting on climate change. Because most of the time, the real stories from ground, whether it is about a negative climate change impact or a positive solution, are somehow missing or somehow lost in the mainstream media. So we also did a lot of series and fellowships for better reporting of media on climate change adaptation, and a detailed technology needs assessment for water sector in our project partner states. Climate finance is another focus. So a lot of focus also goes on capacity building of states for developing bankable proposals for accessing both national and international climate finance. At the same time, leveraging funds from the private sector for undertaking climate change initiatives. So to conclude, I would like to say that capacities at different institutional levels are a key to successful implementation of climate action, also sustainable development action. And we need to develop more mechanisms of dialogue among multiple actors, including different levels of governments. And it is also important to strengthen the role of nodal departments. For example, a nodal department could be for climate change or for sustainable development for a successful policy implementation. And this is the last slide on future directions. There is more need for research on adaptation science, focused research on methodologies for mainstreaming, and the development and diffusion of sustainable technologies for adaptation, and also fostering public-private partnerships. And last but not the least, exploring innovative funding mechanisms like insurance, as an example, for providing risk cover against climate change and variability. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bhatt. That was very, very informative and enlightening. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Karan Shah. He's the SDG practitioner and climate reality leader based in Ahmedabad, India. He's one of the regional leads from South Asia for Climate KIC program, European Union's largest public-private innovation partnership focused on climate innovation and clean tech. His recent endeavors include developing holistic corporate social responsibility action programs for corporates addressing social innovation, entrepreneurship, environmental sustainability, and urban biodiversity, as well as integration of sustainable development goals in the public policy framework. Karan is currently associated with Civitas Sustainability Foundation, working to integrate CSR, climate change, and SDGs. I would request Mr. Karan Shah to give his presentation.
Thanks a lot. I firstly would like to thank Team Nanoland for giving me the opportunity, and I would like to wish everyone a happy World Environment Day. I can share my screen to start the presentation, right?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Today I would like to focus on talking of how we have been changing the landscape into the urban scenario. How can we create our cities become more resilient, more sustainable? Because the reason is that the way we have been developing across world, across country, people are migrating to cities every day. By 2050, I think world half of the population will be living into the cities. So cities are going to be the hub for economy, the hub for people's residing, and it will be also a hub for a lot of GHG emission that will cause to climate change. So having said that, we would have to re-see the way we establish, we manage our cities. What are the key challenges that we face during management of such lifeline services to the cities? How the impact of climate change, the impact of external forces like the one we are going through right now, pandemic like COVID. How does it change people's behavior and resource consumption pattern? So if we just start from the resource angle, that water and energy, they are the growing challenges for our cities. The way we have been designing or developing our current urban development model, it is largely focused on to developing the city on the basis of a grid. So what we do is we create a distant resource for water and energy, and then we try to feed into to the whole city. So we kind of create a centralized grid approach, which actually does not work very well with the developing countries, because we have a challenges of population, we have challenge of infrastructure availability. So considering the whole situation, water and energy, it does become a growing challenge for people. Where we see in the peak summer, we see the examples of water conflict. We see the examples of blackout in the hinterlands of the country. We see the example of farmers not getting the enough amount of water and electricity to till the land. Those are the challenges that we see growing among different cities. Also, scarcity, wastage, and disaster. All of this thing coexist together. Giving an example, still while we had designed this presentation, was 62% of the household having the pipe water, but the ratio has increased. But still, we do not have 100% of population connected directly with the safe pipe water supply. We only have 70% population to have access to water in their toilets, and 32% of population has the access to sewage. Now, considering a lot of population living out of the or not having these access to the basic lifeline services, scarcity and wastage particularly comes in from the population which has the access to the resources. So that there we are not even considering how are we actually consuming the resources. So scarcity coupled with the wastage and disasters like the one we have recently seen, the cyclone, or the one pandemic that is going on, all of this thing when they coexist, it has the impact on the below pyramid population the most. Also, self-supply is something that we live for. Even though having a municipal water connection, everyone in India, in the no, most of the cities in India will have their own water storage option available, because we have understood that it is beyond the capacity of the public administration to ensure the supply of resources for all the time. So we have been going on. No, we have been making the creating ourselves to manage the resources by ourselves. How do we do that? We do that with the by digging up more groundwater bore wells. We try to suck from the resources from the supply. So we have around more than 1 lakh bore wells in a Bangalore city, which goes from 200 feet to 1000 feet. I'm not even going into the water quality level because it varies, and it has a very drastic impact on the people who are living over there. But considering a city like Bangalore, which is the one of the biggest city of India, has more than 1 lakh bore wells among the city itself. Also, waste management is one of the biggest issue that we have been seeing. All the cities across India have been sitting on a pile of a garbage. Uh, the reason we have to the pile of the garbage exists in the first place is something that we have to look into, because we have an attitude of not waste management is not being a personal responsibility. We always consider that waste or whatever waste that has we create every day is the responsibility of government. There is no participation of communities or people into it. So waste management is others problem. There's also we try to see in people's behavior that we have something waste, we would try to throw it out in the street but would not keep it into our own compound. So that's also an attitude which largely prevails. Also, political power at national and state level is something that we focus on, but action is something that is lacking at city and a cluster level. So we always think that the policy or the planning or everything has to come from central level, but we miss out on that. The action has to be taken at a city or a cluster level. So that actually creates a lot of conflict among different classes of people, different institutions, different communities. And you can see that in the on the map over here, India, all the circles that has been drawn, they indicate the water conflict among the region. So bigger the circle, bigger the water conflict is. So we can see that none part of the India has been spared from the water conflict. Even the part which is supposedly water reach the Indo-Gangetic plain also has water conflicts being observed currently. So now, how does one individual or a poor access to services? It is really very difficult for people from below poverty line or from the bottom of the pyramid to access the service. It's a vicious cycle. It is costly affair for people outside the government services to access it, because they have to pay. They cannot get the access of the services, so they have to pay someone to get the services. So it actually increases their overall cost of living. Also, the subsidy benefits which are supposed to be given to the needy does not reach to the right mass always, due to lack of access, due to lack of understanding, knowledge, and coverage for subsidy across the places. Repetitive medical cost that actually reduces the number of working days due to the poor healthcare system or below average healthcare quality offered by the government institution. A lot of people have to divert to private institutions to get their medical no healthcare taken care of, and that actually increases the cost of living for them. Also, it decreases the lesser no their working overall working days. Now, this is very prevalent in all the classes of people. Not this is not only related to people who are below poverty line. It is also visible into the middle class and average working people. We tend to have 4 to 5 days at least in a year. We lose the working days because of the medical reasons. So that is something that is a vicious cycle that everyone goes through. Most of the people in the urban region are located in the high risk areas. So those who do not have the rights of the land, or those who do not have the right for the living, they tend to live in the floodplains. They tend to live in the areas near a river or lake, or try to encroach the part of the land to live it, public land, and they have no or a very insecure land titles. So that way they are into living into the high risk areas. Also, the informal mostly engage into informal activities. So to get an access to subsidy, to get an access to resource, to get an access to basic healthcare, you always have to rely on someone else. So that actually increases the informal activities into the overall system. And there always has been a threat of relocation, because you never know when the government is trying to change the policy, when government tries to change the planning process, and those who are living below the poverty line does not have most of the titles or access to the resources, they tend to move or relocate all the time. Now, this is the kind of paradigm that is very much observed into India, where we have divided the into the 4 sections. One section is the poor and urban slum dwellers, one section is urban local bodies, one section is civil society, and another is private sector. The vertical arrow is grade, talks about the grade and the vulnerability, and the horizontal arrow is about the clue. Now, poor and slum dwellers, what is their understanding, or what is their thinking about the process, is that they don't trust the system, because system shift the goalpost all the time. There is never a pro-poor policy, or there is never a pro-vulnerable population planning that has been done. Reach will not allow the access to the services. It is very much evident that those who have the access to services do not tend to share. So that is something that we think of. It is better to be informally connected, not try to take part into the formal process. Cannot upgrade without the land titles. People think that if they get the land title, then their lifestyle would change, or will increase. And asymmetric information access impacts. So if we go to the urban local body, they think that ULB or tend to have a belief that the planning is always a ULB's task. There is never a bottom-up approach of planning that has been practiced widely in India. ULB should manage all of the service. There has never been an option of decentralizing or giving access to communities to manage their service on their own. ULB's information is authentic, of course. That is something that they try to believe in, and strict control is required to manage the city. Now, when you come to civil society, the belief is that service should be focused on poor, because civil society understands the challenges that prevails into the current system, and have a stance towards pro vulnerable population. Information should be available to all, which is something that they believe. Participatory management is must, which is also a need of the hour. ULB is insensitive to people's need. This is something that this behavior or a belief prevails among civil society, and alternatives are needed for the current system. Now, if we go to private sector, self-supply is better, since we cannot trust ULB. That is something that I already said, that everyone has an access to no, having their own water tank in their home is itself is a sufficient to understand that self supply is better than relying on ULB. Poor should be made to pay like everyone else. If subsidies are given, they should be for all. Over extraction is others' problem. I would still try to extract whatever I can, and private sector can manage the urban services. So this is the great or the understanding of challenges that we see tend to see among people. And unless rich have a surplus, poor will suffer from this scarcity. That is something very underlying. Now, 20th century options and challenges that we are posed through. So 21st century is the age of resource crisis and uncertainty. We have already been going through one pandemic. We are also living through the challenges of climate change, and we are slowly and gradually moving towards a goal where resource is going to be the most important commodity. So yes, that there has to be a better plan for it. Pollution and diseases doesn't respect wall or boundaries. That is something that we have everyone learned during the pandemic. Even though we create a gated community, even though we create no access to our own resources, pollution and diseases does not have a no barrier towards borders, towards boundaries, towards wall. Even if the air is dirty out there, it is going to be dirty for everyone, irrespective of rich or poor. If there is a pandemic out there, it's going to affect everyone. So we have to understand that pollution and disease doesn't have any boundaries. Distant resource based city mobilization metabolism is going to create conflicts. So if the idea is that if we focus more towards the central or a distant resource based planning, the local resources will suffer first, because our attention or our focus towards conservation of local resources will go down drastically. That is something which everyone would be able to see, that the first hit that a natural resource around the city takes is the lakes. That when we try depending or no when we have an access to a distant resource, we will certainly forget the one which is there in our backyard. So distant resource based city metabolism will create conflicts. Cluster and catchment or a city regional level planning and management is must to improve the urban metabolism and prevent waste. So there cannot be a single level of planning. The planning devolution has to happen at all levels to improve the urban metabolism in terms of energy, water, and waste, and also prevent the waste. Decentralized water and energy resources can create global green micro enterprises, create a livelihood for people who are outside the employment system. In addition to that, it will increase the resilience to absorb shocks and stresses. So decentralized water and energy resource planning, if it happens at a colony or a community level, it will create immense amount of opportunity for all the people and businesses. Okay, so what we trying to we should always try to achieve is synergy across scales and sector, because we have understood that the planning that we have been following for about a century now, which is focused on top to bottom level planning, highly focused on resource consumption, is not going to work. We have to further devolve the planning to all the different stakeholders involved, and we also have to focus on the synergies across different scales and sector. How do we do that? Now we are living in a country which is blessed with the monsoon. So we always have to focus when it comes to water. We have to focus set a context that we are in a tropical monsoon region. We have an abundant access to water, at least for the 100 days in a year. Water bodies and aquifers are the untapped ecological assets that city or a urban region should focus on. Particularly at a household and a colony level, micro-scale management can increase the water and energy autonomy. If since every one of us have access or a resource of management at our own scale, if we take it down to the micro scale level scale management, if we will drastically improve the water and energy consumption that we do at our own scale. Building partnership beyond gates and walls. So not focusing on individual supply, not focusing on individual needs, consider getting communities closed together, participating into the planning with another community, another locality will increase the synergy across different scales. Local resources as a backup against the great failure. So every community now needs to should or must focus on that. What are the resources are present in their own backyard? Whether it is it's a place where they can put up energy generation, green energy generation capacity. It is there if there is a wetland over there, if there is a green space available across their community, all of those resources needs to be mapped. Their potential services to their lives needs to be quantified, and then there has to be a plan made at a community scale to how can they use those resources in time of crisis. When we jump to city level, less reliance on distant resources, like not building another bigger dam, but focus on the creating another set of rainwater harvesting at own scale, and now reconnect people with the local resources. At least map what was there traditionally in a city's boundary. How many lakes were there, how many traditional wells were there, how many green spaces or biosphere were present in the community, how much of it has been lost, how much of it can be rejuvenated, and how much of it can be leveraged for the city's own sake. That is something that a city level planning has to come. And cluster based focus on the subsidiarity has to come in. That will actually change the understanding and planning process all in together. And ULB has to understand or ULB has to take a stance that their focus should be on the supply of resources and constantly monitoring and regulating. They are not the sole provider of resources to the citizens. They have to focus on working as a bulk supplier. They have to focus on more focus on monitoring and regulating the usage of resource rather than getting it available. So that is something will increase the synergy across scales and sector. Okay. So this is something that we have learned through our projects, in different cities across India, where we had tried doing the colony level water resource management. We had tried rejuvenating the urban lake. If there are a lot of lakes which were on the verge of, they were dead actually. We tried, bring them back into the life, tried them at least to a level where they were almost back in the shape where they were earlier. Not particularly, we could not save most of the biota, but it came back to at least the level. Promoting urban agriculture and forestry, off-grid and backup solar system, and decentralized sewage treatment plant. This all were tried with different communities in different parts of India, where our focus at city level, we worked with at two levels, city level and community level. So while we were working at the city level, our focus was more onto how can we create a system which can give people an early warning about the coming disaster. Like, how can we have a flood or a cyclone early warning system? How can we have a city-wide or a health monitoring system which can actually give in people enough amount of data, or give the policymakers enough amount of information to take a swift action? How can we integrate these smart grids? How can we map the air quality, water quality in the groundwater, in the lake, and also the weather pattern in the different parts of the city? And how can we create those data points so that people can understand the changes happening in and around their community? So it is not about, when we talk about climate change, we talk about at a region scale. When you talk, people will know that at a regional scale, they tend not to connect with it because they don't understand the regional or the scale, that bigger scale. If you talk people about their area, what is the air quality in their area, what is the water quality in their area, how is it has changed over a period of time, what are the impacts of climate change going to aggravate all of this degradation, then people tend to connect with it very well. because then they get to see that this is regarding my area, this is regarding my locality, this is regarding my city. So at a city level, we integrated these smart services, at least for the monitoring of the resources, so that there can be a better informed planning decision taken later on. And starting from the community level, we took it on how can a city level water management plan, one focused on the bulk supply, that is the city getting water from the government, central state government, or the nearest water body. Also, how can city develop water collection and harvesting system across different parts of the city itself. So it was both plans to connect it together. And when we talk to the micro scale, to people at a household or a community level, we tend to focus on how can you focus on more water and energy saving. How can you create your own water, or conserve your own water and energy by yourself? How can you reduce your energy consumption through different different affordable techniques like cool roof, passive ventilation, new and informed usage of technology in a smart home. So that is something that we used to talk to people. That working at all this level actually changed the people's habit in terms of utilizing the resource, people's review towards climate change and its perceived impact. Their understanding of the perceived impact of climate change also changed at the end of such exercises. So now doing all of this thing, these are the clumsy solution, to increase the resilience, where we are again come back to the four main pillars of the society, that is poor, urban local bodies, civil society, and private sector or cluster. Now, clumsy solution given to all four stakeholders. For to poor and slum dwellers, it creates opportunity for local solution. When we integrate all of the solutions that we just discussed, it will create more job opportunities, it will create more local enterprises for people of below poverty class. It will create more training and capacity needs on the ground, so that will actually increase their collective bargaining power to ULBs. They will, once they have access to more finances, once they have access to more technology, once they gradually start to come into the formal system, their collective bargaining power towards society and system increases. When it comes to ULBs, when you put up the clumsy solutions like this, it actually focuses more onto how can we create platforms to bring more stakeholders together. Typically, the small ULBs across, or small and the many ULBs across India tend to work in the isolation, not forming collaborations, not forming partnerships. So it creates a platform for ULBs to engage with other stakeholders, share the planning insights, and when it comes to civil society, it can facilitate all those partnership among different stakeholders. It can actually take up a role of pivoting all these solutions, and channeling it to the different stakeholders together, and it will, create a good advocacy for city's own corporate responsibility. That is something that we also focus on. That every corporate in a city, they tend to have their own responsibility towards the cities that they are functioning in. So that is something that civil society can leverage or channelize on. When it comes to private sector, there is one certain takeaway that is there from the clumsy solution, is that the resilience will increase the efficiency of operation, and it will create another market, or it will create another set of economic and technological opportunities, technological disruption, I would say, opportunities for private sector to bring in. On the basis of such clumsy solution, we will see the next innovations and technological disruptions coming in. We have already started seeing it. even just before 5 years ago, we did not have a much reliance of accessing services through our mobile phones. Now we are more and more getting into into how can we integrate the services just in one smartphone. How can we get more understanding and hold of our own households and our own area through smart measures like sensors and home automation. So it actually opens up a new segment altogether for private sector to build upon the innovation and bring the economic improvement. So building resilient cities, how can we bring from policy to practices? Like if from the point of urban planning, regional and local context now has to coexist together with the future scenarios of informed planning that must come in. So it is not about only that ULB should plan at a central level or a regional level. There has to be a both level of planning happening together, designing multiple actions to build resilience. As we just see that there are a number of actions that a ULB can take together when it comes to conserving your own wetland, managing your own green space, fostering the green technology and its integration into society. There are multiple actions that can build resilience. Eco-urbanism based planning across different scales, mapping the resources in a community, monitoring the changes that happens into it over a period of time, and then build upon the how can we conserve the resources to use it in the time of crisis. That kind of approach has to come in. That will actually connect more people and communities more with the resources. Once you tell them that how can they leverage the resource in the time of crisis, they tend to understand the planning and they tend to understand the value of it. Also, low carbon and high resource efficiency focused planning has to have come in. When it comes to urban management, we have to focus on the cluster level system. How can we empower the cluster level institutions, at a colony level? How can we integrate all the changes at a colony level, and then focus on the monitoring, management, controlling, and nudging. So not taking all the responsibility together, but largely saving the efforts towards monitoring and managing and controlling the resources will create a good scenario for ULBs to practice resilience across in the cities. Capacity building is something that is highly needed. Right now, since we have been we are living in the tech era, and the pandemic has made us being highly reliant on the online learning. There are new and new online learning tools based on the this clumsy solution can be developed for city level. We had developed certain programs for healthcare monitoring, for flood management, city level flood management, air quality mapping, and trend analysis, particularly for urban developers, urban planners, and policy makers. So those kind of capacity building initiatives, that too particularly focusing on different sectors like air quality, water management, waste management, hazard and disaster management, climate change, low carbon growth. All of this can be developed into a capacity building module, along with the new and disruptive technologies that are coming in the market, and that can be that has to be created as a capacity building module for the ULBs. And at the end of it, citizen engagement. So to building the awareness and demand for the local solutions, and there has to be a city level technological or a support center which talks about the implication of technology, implication of research into the urban climate change and increasing urban resilience. That is how people would at least tend to understand climate change and its perceived impact when it is being talked to them about their own city or about their own community. Also, when we establish such technology and research center at a city level or a community level, we tend to understand the changes that are happening at a micro scale or a ground scale very minutely. So that will further improve the awareness and drive the change. So yes, in nutshell, this is this is us, that we have been working on the increasing resilience through different tools, technology, planning, research with different communities, conserving resources, and yeah, we would love to share more with you if you have any questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Karan Shah. That was a very, very informative presentation. Now I would like to welcome Ms. Diana Yesuraj. She is a biotechnologist and a Google certified educator for advanced level biological sciences. She has a master's in biotechnology and a postgraduate diploma holder in bioinformatics. Her professional background revolves around 7 years of experience in scientific research and academics. Currently, she is working at the University of Dubai as a lecturer under the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in the UAE. She is a lifetime certified member of IFERP India, and she has served as a member of National Advisory Committee for an international conference on science and technology in Dubai. Prior to that, she has served in the Indian Institute of Horticulture Research under the Indian Council of Agricultural Research in India. Both research laboratories are under the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, India. I would request Ms. Yesuraj to deliver her presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for introducing me. This is definitely an honor to come on this platform. First of all, good evening. Hello, hi. Wishing you all a happy World Environment Day. We all have gathered here to celebrate, I feel, the world's biggest day to celebrate environment. And as much as I know you all know that World Environment Day is not supposed to be done on a single day. I mean, we need to be aware, we need to conserve nature, we need to fall in love with making this place a happier place, a better place every day. But nonetheless, we have a day dedicated to the World Environment Day. So yeah, I'm going to quickly share my screen and give you all a very global perspective on how I have viewed this topic. Being an educator, I have chosen not to be like polarized and specific. Instead, I've chosen to go for a generic perspective of this topic. Okay, this would take you from the history of World Environment Day till whatever events have happened till date. How is biotechnology, how is sustainability making an effort to change the existing climate change disaster? How is it making the world a better place? So basically, being an educator, as I told you earlier, I have this need to go from start to end. So this is going to be a comprehensive lens. Okay, so, okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, it is visible. It's totally fine.
Okay, great. So, so first of all, talking about the roots. Okay. Let's start with the United Nations. Okay, 1972, the World Environment Day was not celebrated, but it was definitely established as an idea. It was a strategic idea that was done to allow countries to carry on this feeling of celebrating environment every single year. So after 1972, 1974 was the first year in which it was celebrated with the theme Only One Earth. And since then, various countries have started hosting it and various countries have started celebrating it in their own ways. And you all must know that for this year, the theme for 2021 World Environment Day is ecosystem restoration. And our neighboring country, Pakistan, is the global host for this important day. Okay, so now there is one thing, there's one difference being persistent and one thing is being consistent. I'm sure when the United Nations thought of going or initiating this World Environment Day or dedicating this special day, they might have thought of making people aware and they thought every country would be persistent with this effort. But I'm sure there has not been like a statistically significant improvement. Otherwise, the Paris Climate Accord in 2015 would not have existed or it would not have risen. Okay, so in 2015, you all must know that there was this global warming agreement, which is called the Paris Climate Accord. And owing to the disastrous effect of climate change right now, they have aimed to their aim in 2015 was to not exceed 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So ideally, Okay, the global warming should be limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius and not more than that. So they have given a statistically significant number, and we all have to work for that. So that's the difference being, so they were persistent, but in order for that effort to be consistent, the Paris Climate Accord gave another aim, another goal, and every country who is celebrating and not celebrating this, everybody had an aim to look forward to. Okay, so and this Paris Agreement, it also was trying to bridge the gap between developed nations and the developing countries. So it's like the accountability is being shared, you know. So those countries who don't have the necessary infrastructure, facilities, money, resource, population, okay, population definitely the developing countries do have, but if they don't have the adequate resources, the developed nations were ready to collaborate and bridge the gap between the rich and poor countries. So yes, nations together have to work to find solutions, like literally practical solutions, to sustainably develop the nature and develop in such a way that not only do we meet the needs of the present, but we also need to conserve our nature for our future generation. Okay, so when we talk about environment, I would like to talk about COVID-19. I'm sure none of you can ignore it. I'm very sure. Since last year, COVID-19, the world's greatest pandemic, or should I say the world's greatest disaster in terms of infectious disease, we all have been struggling under that. And because of that, there have been like two things. The positive side of that is because of the lockdown, people have been restricted, transportation has been restricted, and overall global economies have been restricted. So but for the nature, I'm sure nature has gotten enough time to, you know, replenish or clean itself and come back to form. But on the other hand, the negative effect is the enormous amount of medical waste, untreated waste that has been dumped into the world, into the air, water, land, and it is deteriorating its quality. So as much as there have been positive effects, there have also been negative impacts. And after, we definitely hope that this can be resolved in the next 1 or 2 years. But once the situation goes back to normal, the environment may start suffering again if we do not pay attention to cleaning up all these unnecessary medical waste. Okay, so here I would like to introduce sustainability and biotechnology, the initiatives which are currently doing good enough. Like it's a good strategy to sustainably protect the environment. Okay, so the first thing I would like to talk about in biotechnology is crop biotechnology or agricultural biotechnology. Okay, science and technology always has to be clubbed with innovation, right? Because if there's innovation, if there's creative and critical thinking, we will ensure that there is enough access to food, water, and income in the face of climate change. So if there is something that can hold all of us together to face climate change, that would be scientific innovation. So crop biotechnology has come up with this thing called genetically modified crops. This has been since long. Okay, genetic modification has been since long, but the efficacy of genetically modified crops becoming drought resistant, salinity resistant, insecticide resistant, pesticide resistant, weedicide resistant, all of those resistances have proven to be of a good thing in crop biotechnology right now. Like initially when crop biotechnology or genetic modification came into existence, there was a lot of ethical issues that came into action. Like, will it be consumable? Will it be edible? Won't these genetically modified crops be expensive to cultivate? But no, I'm here to shed light on that. Biotech crops will in fact increase the nutritional value, the edible content of the grains, the crops, and also because it delivers more nutritional yield and more quantitative yield, in a less amount of land, you can generate a larger amount of crop compared to its conventional counterpart. Okay, so that's like making the best use of land. And then second thing is, when you use biotech crops, they are self-sufficient. They are resistant to a lot of stuff. So we don't have to use synthetic fertilizers or chemical pesticides. We don't have to spend a lot of time and money to manage or maintain these crops, due to which a lot of synthetic usage has been reduced, and the environmental impact of these biotechnology crops or genetically modified crops have definitely reduced carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, they have definitely reduced greenhouse emissions. So if innovation can lead to reduce in the carbon emission, or if it can lead to reduction in the carbon footprint, what else do we need? Isn't that the need of the hour? So biotech crops and genetically modified crops have definitely helped reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, and then biotechnology has agricultural innovation or crop biotechnology has also paved a way for employment for the low-income communities. So they have developed inclusion as an attitude, which is a very important aspect of sustainable development, that is to bridge the gap between policymakers and the low-income communities. It is to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, so that the poor can avail not only employment, but they also get access to their basic resources easily and faster. So definitely the small holding farmers, they have had a boost in their income when they have cultivated and grown biotech crops. And also because all the extra money or all the extra boost that they get could be invested into their other personal sectors in life, housing for them, education for them, health facilities for them. All of this is, all of this can be enhanced when they adopt biotech crops. And this has been statistically proven. There are scientific articles on this. So basically, science and technological innovations and crop biotechnology combined together is nothing but agricultural innovation. And this has definitely helped farmers use crop protection products. So in a way, we have taken care of food safety and nutrition. Then there's another thing, like if we talk about, like we are focusing more on climate change right now, and climate change is definitely because of rising carbon dioxide. So what are the bad effects of climate change on health and nutrition? So on one side, we definitely have crop biotechnology enhancing the farmer's livelihood, but on the other hand, because of increase in the global temperature, there's a lot of heat. Yeah, so warmer temperatures, so then increase in the food spoilage. There would be increase in food contamination. There would be problem in transporting food. There would be problem in distribution of food. So the climatic events which we consider extreme on like a global level is actually extremely affecting each and every aspect of industries. Also, because of increase in the amount of carbon dioxide and increase in temperature, there have been variations in the amount of carbohydrate content produced in the crop. Okay, due to which the amount of proteins or the amount of essential minerals, they are less. So the nutritional value has kind of gotten biased to carbs or carbohydrates. So this is definitely influencing the nutritional content of food. Okay, and other than that, there are a lot of infectious agents, pathogens, toxins. Okay, leave toxins, but there's a lot of infectious agents on the rise due to temperature, and there are a lot of bacteria, there are a lot of infectious agents becoming resistant to this increase in temperature. Now this, if not tackled wisely, will definitely be a problem in the future. Okay, and once again, if I come back to like COVID-19 and climate change, there have been like a lot of theories coming up. Is climate change going to impact COVID-19, or is COVID-19 impacting climate change? Both of it is correct. Yeah, there's a connection. There's a connection between climate change and COVID-19. Vice versa, they are interdependent, or interdependent in terms of causing disaster to each other. Okay, and there are statistical facts where climate change is critically hampered because of COVID-19. Till now, there have been these theories coming up when we had the COVID-19 initially, and people were like, in the high temperatures, the COVID-19 would increase, or there were contrasting theories which said in high temperatures, the COVID-19 would decrease. This was because of the history of a lot of similar other infectious diseases. Okay, but till now, we have not established any seasonal influence on COVID-19, but definitely COVID-19 has triggered an increase in climate change because of a ton of medical waste being released and spoiling the air, water, land quality. Okay, so after COVID-19, when the world will recover, or after COVID-19, we are not here to wait, sit around and wait for what will happen post COVID-19. We can definitely start initiating actions that could probably be a contribute to a healthier life post COVID-19. So one of them would be preservation of nature. And preservation of nature is something that we all can do, even on an individual level. You don't have to be a firm or a partnership or a multi-billion corporation to do that. Simple things like indoor gardening, which has become extremely common right now, that's a form of preservation of nature. Using your kitchen leftovers as a compost, that's a form of preservation of nature. Not returning the waste, in fact, using the waste from the products that you consume is a form of preservation of nature. Okay, and then investing in clean and green energies, that's important. And then when we look at economies, we know that economy has subsided. Okay, it has, like if you look at the prices of oil and gas, globally it has reduced. But then post COVID-19, there should be like strategies and policies to make sure that this safety in health and environment, or this reduction in these prices of oil and gas should be sustained. So we should invest in renewable, we should invest in green sources of energy, we should stop funding pollution at a basic level. Whatever medical waste has been discarded, we should recycle it. So there are definitely policies and strategies working towards sustainable development post COVID-19. Out of which one important technology which I would like to highlight is direct air carbon dioxide capture. Okay, this is one example of the DAC technology. This is a promising technique in which, this is a picture of a firm which is called Carbon Engineering Technology, and they have developed, they are prominently using this direct air capture technology, in which these giant fans, they just suck in the atmospheric air, and then they filter the carbon dioxide from the air. And whatever carbon dioxide has been sucked into the factories that will be used for production and recycling of goods and whatnot, like based on whatever their products or processes are, and the filtered air is released back into the atmosphere. Okay, so this is a very good example of how important, or how important it is to focus on climate right now. Okay, we cannot just allow climate change to happen in a disastrous manner. We have to cut down the carbon dioxide emissions, the greenhouse emissions. And this technology is also promising because if this is implemented on a global level everywhere, this will reverse years and years of out of control emissions. Okay. Apart from this, there are a few sustainability initiatives which I would like to introduce to all of you. First is increase in green buildings. Green buildings is just not having a green vehicle or painting your building green, obviously not. It's about utilizing your natural resources, utilizing the location, utilizing the people very well, and not generating waste. If possible, reducing waste, or even if more possible, getting a zero waste factory or an industry. So that's increasing green buildings, and that's happening everywhere. Then increase in sustainability focused education, and the University of Dubai has we have definitely targeted towards development, to focusing on sustainability developmental goals, the United Nations SDGs. We are keeping in line with them, and we are definitely educating and creating more awareness among youngsters, especially young adolescents, to have better ways of thinking, shifting their mindset, and conserving nature. And then another thing is preserving of marine biodiversity. This is exclusively done by the Abu Dhabi Sustainable Group, in which they have conserved marine biodiversity by literally sending out genetically modified bacteria to clean out all the plastic. They have carried out extensive bioremediation, and they are taking an extra care, like how we keep pets at home, extensively taking care of the marine organisms up till 50-kilometer depth, horizontally and vertically. And then waste to energy plant, like the Emirates Waste to Energy Company in the UAE they have processed solid waste to generate electricity. And all the waste which is to be directed to landfills is being diverted. And definitely, this is definitely displacing tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And then there are these systems of closed loop production. One example is Unilever and Alibaba. They are making use of AI and reversing the vending machines to make recycling bottles easier. So if we have like a closed loop production system wherein whatever, after all the raw materials, after all the products that are being let out, all the byproducts being after the product goes to the consumer, whatever byproduct or whatever waste is generated, if we can find a way to trigger all of them back into the production cycle, that would be extremely good. So it's like zero waste. Okay, these are all certain thoughts about sustainability, and I have been able to get these examples because these initiatives are being carried out. These are being carried out everywhere. Okay, I would like to show you the list of some of the countries which perform best to achieve the SDGs. So SDGs, as you all know, I'm sure you might be knowing. If not, it's a list of 17 different goals proposed by the United Nations, which each and every member nation of the UN has to follow. Even countries who are not part of the member nations can sign up for the SDGs and carry out initiatives to, tackle climate change and reduce greenhouse emissions. So you can check out the list here with Denmark leading in achievement of sustainable goals. So this is just informative to give you an idea how countries or how the global arena is performing. That's it. Because we don't have a planet B. Okay, and the latest thing that I would like to make you all aware is, if you all are active users of Twitter, you might have heard that the Tesla and SpaceX CEO, Elon Musk, he announced the largest incentive prize in human history, that is a revolutionary $100 million X prize. And this is a reward for any groundbreaking solution which can help in carbon removal. And DAC, the direct air capture technology, and capturing carbon dioxide from biomass and conserving it for creating energy, both of them have opted to collect 7 teams from countries worldwide and work on it. So this is called the X Prize carbon removal. So when I shed light on this, this is to make you all aware that just talking about climate change or positive conversations would be helpful only if it is clubbed with action. So this is something that's open to all. It's anybody can apply and propose a groundbreaking theory or a solution. So isn't this an inspiring act? Definitely it is. So this is something that I want you all to go for and apply for. So now, summing up everything about sustainability and biotechnology, just to summarize everything, you and I, we all can do something at home. We can all do something at an individual level, because we are all, even if we are not multi-billion-dollar corporations, we definitely can do things within our homes or within our institutions or with friends or whatever. So these are some of the things that we all can do, like going paper-free, plastic-free, freezing your leftovers so that you don't waste food, discarding your junk email, not putting a pressure on data centers, carpool. If you're sharing, if you're going to work from a common place, share your vehicle, do carpooling, recycle waste, and these are small little things that would make a big difference in changing the structure of disaster that climate change is facing. Okay, so even if I know that things don't happen in an instant, it's so easy to talk and listen to conversations like this, but if you can do a small tiny act of mindfulness and nature conservation, this will definitely be a huge leap, because we are billions of people all around the world. So these are small little initiatives that you can take at home, and we all need to keep working. It's not only about being persistent, it's also about being consistent. And towards the end, I would like to sum up by showing you this picture, which is called the pale blue dot. When I take you all through these comprehensive lens, I just want you to have a broad perspective that you are here. Okay, this white dot that you see, you are here. This is, and as Carl Sagan said, this earth is the only home that we've ever known. And you are not lost, you are here. So when there's an envelope of darkness around this small pale blue dot, why can't we make it just a happy place by conserving nature and making the best use of initiatives happening across the world? Okay, so that's my time. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much, Diana. That was an exceptional presentation. Now, it is my honor to introduce you all to Miss Anne Rochyne Thomas. She currently works on biophilic design projects that align science, profitability, and cultural dynamics. She's a conservationist whose focus is on creating spaces and encouraging lifestyles that are positively responsive to nature and societal needs. I would request Ms. Anne Rochyne Thomas to give her presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rochyne, and I'm a bioclimatic adaptation strategist based in Kerala. I would like to thank Nanoland for inviting me to be a part of this webinar on World Environment Day. I will now be sharing my screen for my presentation on cloudburst resilience. Water is the primary medium through which we will be experiencing the effects of climate change. And life as we know it will be increasingly challenging with rising sea levels, rapid population growth, urban sprawl, and altered landscapes, particularly in the global south. Studies have predicted that future floods are likely to be up to 3 times more frequent and 15 times more intense than we have ever seen. Sea levels are projected to rise by around 1 meter by the year 2010. So in cities where we live, where buildings and all the services are located on the street or below the street level when there is basement parking and underground floors, the risk becomes greater. Many cities also have a combined stormwater sewage pipe system. So floodwater gets contaminated and penetrates the city's infrastructure during extreme rainfall events. A current response to both cloudbursts and also to prolonged periods of rainfall is centered around very hasty clearing up of waterways, evacuation of vulnerable communities, and opening of dam gates. We can no longer afford to be reactive. We need to be proactive to climate risks, and we need to make our villages and cities cloudburst resilient. Cloudbursts can have catastrophic impacts on the economy and human health. Flash floods destroy infrastructure, crops, and homes, and also lead to a rise in waterborne diseases. The natural water cycle is inherently circular. We only need to make sure that the water cycle continues to remain functional. Urban water cycles are a disaster because of large areas of impervious ground surface and also obstacles in the course of water. So what we need is to allow water, all of it, to get back into that natural cycle. And for that, we need to use more permeable surfaces for roads and pavements and leave more areas exposed for more percolation. We also need to clear our waterways from plastic and other debris, including weeds, especially the invasive ones. We have to make way for stormwater to be conveyed to natural water bodies and to make sure that water remains circular. We have to allow it to flow, and that is the principle behind sustainable drainage systems. Cities and towns in developing nations are generally unplanned. They have grown organically and are still growing. Our current infrastructure is grossly inadequate to cope with higher precipitation frequency and higher levels of frequency, especially cloudbursts. Conventional gray infrastructure is generally expensive and it's underground or it's hidden from sight because it's ugly. Blue-green solutions, on the other hand, they are low-tech and they are intentionally placed on the surface. They are interactive as well. So the blue-green approach is about finding the synergy between different climate adaptation solutions. And after suffering numerous extreme rainfall events the world over, we have now understood how important it is to build sustainable buildings and parks, but it is equally important to retrofit existing structures with blue-green interventions such as bioretention basins or cloudburst boulevards and artificial water bodies like canals and ponds. Now, they are not only aesthetically pleasing, but They can also develop as interactive street elements. Bioretention basins are recessed mini gardens that are designed to capture and retain stormwater. So these shallow planted depressions reduce runoff by allowing it to soak into the ground instead of flowing into storm drains or surface waters and then polluting the waters downstream. So the vegetation reduces nutrient export through plant uptake, filtering and sorption, and also improves soil infiltration. Micro retention basins, such as rain gardens or bioswales, can be vegetated or mulched or even xeriscaped channels in arid regions. So they absorb 30% more stormwater into the ground than a conventional lawn, and also reduce about 70% of surface water pollution that originates from stormwater runoff. So they help in many ways, in water retention and in treatment and maintaining water quality, and also in conveying stormwater to a sewer system. Bioswales are designed more for cleaning and processing water as well as conveying it, while rain gardens are more strictly designed to absorb stormwater. And rain gardens they also differ from bioretention swales in their surface footprints. For rain gardens, it may range from about 1/6 to 1/12 the size of the area that drains into it. And even though bioswales, they look similar to rain gardens on the surface, but they also include a reservoir below the surface, below the ground. So this reservoir can store a large volume of water. And so the surface footprint of a bioswale is generally much smaller than a rain garden, and this makes them perfect for urban areas where space is a constraint. Bioswales are able to absorb runoff from small rain events and entreat large amounts of water, which are then directed to the stormwater management system. So this in turn, it reduces the overall runoff volume and the flow rate, which is received by the larger stormwater system. When the drainage capacity of subterranean sewers exceed, pluvial flooding occurs. And then if we have detention basins in cities, that can only temporarily divert excess runoff water. Green infrastructure is also inadequate beyond the saturation level to prevent fluvial flooding on its own. So this makes it absolutely essential to align pre-existing underground infrastructure or on-surface infrastructure with detention basins, retention basins, and cloudburst boulevards to mitigate pluvial flooding. And in dry conditions, cloudburst boulevards will be ordinary streets with raised sidewalks. But during extreme rainfall events, they will transform into canals, basically. They are controlled stormwater transport corridors. And thousands of liters of stormwater can be conveyed on such above ground waterways through cloudburst tunnels to the sea or a large reservoir if it is not a coastal city. In dry conditions, cloudburst boulevards can serve as a green space for the city, as a park, as a vegetation pocket to enhance urban biodiversity. They can also reduce the air, water, and noise pollution and enhance the aesthetics of the city and make it more livable. So stormwater then ceases to be a problem. It becomes a resource that supports positive ecological and social urban dynamics. While designing a cloudburst formula, we need to consider the compound flood scenarios from storm surge driven by sea level rise and also the changing precipitation patterns. But adaptation projects are usually seen as very expensive insurance, as a very expensive insurance policy that might not pay out. So it's this constricted decision-making process that arises from the uncertain costs and a slow approach that is often taken by the administration of local bodies. But this will not work because water knows no geographical or regulatory boundary. So co-creation becomes a necessity. Cloudburst interventions, they increase the hydrological capacity of water bodies, increase the mental and physical health of the community, increase revenue for local businesses and also through tourism, and also increase urban biodiversity. And the prevention of macro-scale loss of GDP caused by extreme flooding and the increase in real estate value are also very significant benefits from cloudburst adaptation. So that should get people interested. So when a cost-benefit analysis is done, implementing cloudburst adaptation projects will definitely be the wiser choice. The cost of construction for cloudburst and stormwater management can be reduced if cloudburst and such projects are integrated with other construction projects. You know, the synergy projects between utility companies or between the municipality, the local bodies, the town planning departments or traffic departments, NGOs, interested people in the public. This is vital for an efficient cloudburst strategy. Because co-creation is a means to foster participation of end users by actively involving them in the innovation process. And this also helps to expand the knowledge base and creativity, and helps to build trust, partnerships, and it also increases the acceptance of the project among the public. Through a stakeholder partnership process, an effective mix of private and public funding can be obtained to make climate adaptive cities a reality. Civilizations have formed around water bodies because water is the basis of life itself. Climate resilient urban ecological waterscapes are what the cities of the future will be. Holistic urban spaces that are rewarding to all the residents of the city, both human and wildlife. And for making our communities water-centric, we only need to respect the course of water and let water flow. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rochyne. That was a very marvelous presentation. Lastly, I would like to welcome Mr. Jabir Haka. Mr. Haka is an engineer and works with the revolutionary government of Zanzibar as petroleum inspector at Zanzibar Utilities Regulatory Authority since 2017, dealing to regulate downstream petroleum sector, importation, storage, transportation, and quality. He is an active professional member at the Society of provide his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited here today. Thank you, Nanoland. Thank you, Dr. Rajesh, for inviting me. Without forgetting our scientific officer, Mr. Zanesh, for his excellent communication to me. I have a few slides here to share with. Let me share my screen. Okay, imagining and implementing a better future for our beloved world. This is just a brief explanation about Zanzibar. And this is my company, Zanzibar Utility Regulatory Authority. As by profession, I'm a petroleum engineer. My presentation today here will discuss about introduction, reason for environmental degradation, environmental issues, adaptation and mitigation measures, and conclusion. Introduction. This presentation provides an analysis of the current environmental situation and outline major environmental concerns and challenges facing the world, including Zanzibar. A variety of environmental problems now have affected our beloved world due to globalization and natural processes. Few societies have been left without untouched with this degradation. Reason for environmental degradation. Everything is connected to everything else. That means every action made will either generate positive or negative effect. No matter how big or small, it is helpful to look at the situation through a sustainability lens. The Garrett Hardin described in his trajectory of command, the mass of people acting in their own best interest can be detrimental to society as a whole without regarding we are living in a world with limited resources. That means not a person alone can be able to make or save the world. We have to work together in order to reach the goals. Environmental issues. According to Island 2021, recently he has explained 7 major critical problems: climate change, air pollution, lost biodiversity, continued plastic pollution, global warming, deforestation, and coral reef die-off. Let's come to Zanzibar. Environmental effects in Zanzibar. Currently, Zanzibar has 5 major environmental problems. The first biggest is climate change. Climate change in Zanzibar has recent decades have rising in temperature, ocean acidification, increased rainfall, increased high level tides, increased extremely climate variability, and coastal and marine environment. This coastal erosion and salt intrusion of around 20% in Unguja and 30% in Pemba have been in 5 meters above the sea level. They have been affected according to the climate change rising in sea level. Also, there's around 150 separate intrusion sites identified. These have been affected by saltwater intrusion. This example, which shows 5 meter continuous line from Unguja and Pemba, as you can see here, this is the key. These areas have been affected. All of these areas have been affected by 5 meters below the sea level, above the sea level. Also, this is the example of 150, as I have explained before. These are the current mapped saltwater intrusion. These are the areas which have been found. This is Pemba Island, and this is Unguja Island. All of these areas have been affected with water salt intrusion. Also, this was, before it was a resident area, this is a well. People were living here, but because of the effect of climate change, they had to be removed, and all of these have been affected with the climate change. And including this increased beach erosion affects continuous and effect settlements. All of these areas, before these were, people were living here, but because of the climate change rising in sea level, they had to be removed. Another problems of Zanzibar, which currently we have right now, is waste management. Currently, Zanzibar has about 654 tons per day. We generate waste for each day. The forecast solid waste generation in Zanzibar will be about this amount, 312,655 tons, about 855 tons, and 1,110 tons per day, respectively, in 2028 and 2038. Over 8% of solid waste generated in Zanzibar municipality are the organic origin, and an estimated 6% of the waste is not properly collected. 6% is not properly collected. There is no solid waste separation in all steps of solid waste management and subjected to crude form of dumping. Currently, there's no centralized sewage system in Zanzibar. Only Stone Town has some areas in number of Zanzibar urban municipality are served by sewage system. Domestic wastewater is discharged into septic tank, after which the overflow combined with steam water and gets finally disposed into the sea through 27 sea outfalls. 27 sea outfalls. Let's see the picture here. This is example of Forodhani Sea outfall. This point is a discharging point. All of the waste products have been discharged here, untreated waste. So this is the dangerous situation that we have that is destroying our beloved world. Also, we have another point here which says water resource and supply. The principal source of water supply in Zanzibar depend on groundwater. And because of uncontrolled settlement, people build a house in a source of water, source of production of water. So there's a lot of food destruction of forest, which is happening because of uncontrolled settlement. And also affect the recharging capacity of the groundwater. Let's see the example here. This was the example, Mwanyanya in 1980 and Mwanyanya in 2024. Here is a pumping station. At the beginning, there was a little amount of buildings here, as you can see, but in 2004, lots of people have been settled here. They have built their homes and houses. So this has affected the environment. Even the groundwater has been affected. This also the same example as previous one, Kaburi Kikombe in 1980 and Kaburi Kikombe in 2004. As you can see, the settlement here is few, but here in 2004, people have built many houses, and they have distracted the world. The same example, Kijitopele in 1980 and Kijitopele in 2004. Non-renewable natural resources. In Zanzibar, these resources include sand, gravels, rocks, stones, soil, morum, and limestone, which are currently extracted. There's an increase in land degradation caused by unstable excavation of non-renewable resource, leading to lost product lands and biodiversity, increased soil erosion, and exposure of groundwater aquifer. This is an example of former quarry site used for road construction in Unguja. Also, this is an example of uncoordinated limestone brick cutting at Uwandani, Chake Pemba. Also, this is illegal sand collection at Yumbi area. All of these are examples of degradation of problems which are currently happening in Zanzibar. Energy. Currently, more than 90% of population of Zanzibar continue to rely on biomass, fired charcoal, and residual. This almost cause deforestation, according to use of this firewood as a energy or source of energy. Let's come to adaptation and mitigation measures. What we need is sustainable world. These are equity, environment, and economic. We must balance these things in order to have this sustainable world, as we can see in the diagram. Adaptation and mitigation, we have to plan, or we have to keep the strategies in order to remove or reduce the impact of this vulnerability or climate change and other problems, as I've mentioned before. Also, enhanced capacity monitoring. We have to increase capacity monitoring. We have to coastal buffer zones. We have to keep coastal buffer zones. For example, you can say 30 meters in the coastal area must be as our buffer zone. Or other countries, they say 6 meters. It depends on the nation or an island. So we have to keep these coastal buffer zone in order to protect our environment. Also, focusing on capacity building and low regret options. We have to, anything that we do today could affect our future. So in order not to have a regression, we must do effective ways or effective measures in order to prevent the future. Also, we have to integrate land use plans at national and local level, take proactive measures for early warning system, awareness raising is what we are doing here today, providing awareness to the society. Changing our main energy source to clean and renewable energy, solar energy, wind, geothermal, or biomass could be the solution. Also, we have to use circular economy, 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle. We have to reduce the amount of waste that we produce each and every day. Also, we have to reduce the amount of production of unnecessary products or goods so that we can be able to have the better future for all. To reduce the carbon emission is among the adaptation of the problems. Promote rational use of non-living resources. Also, there's a non-living resources like sand and others. We're supposed not to use them whatever we want. We have to use them rationally so that we could prevent for the future generation. Let me conclude my presentation. In order to have a better future for our beloved world, I will work together to balance the need of people, environment, and economy for present and future generations. Proper and sound integrated marine and terrestrial spatial plan, policy, legal, strategy, and implementable action plan is needed. There's no planet B. This is my last slide. There's no planet B. We have to work together. We have to make sure we preserve the world so that our future young generation will benefit from it, is what we are doing. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haga. That was a fantastic presentation. Now the platform is open for discussion and questions raised by the participants and also our panelists who are eager to answer your raised questions. I guess we have a few questions that were already answered in the chat window, but we still have one or two questions that are still outstanding. One question that we have is from an attendee. It says there is a big gap between the policymakers and the ground level workers, that is the rural people. Along with this, another gap is the economic status of the rich and the poor is also increasing the trend. What strategies can be taken to mitigate these for sustainable development? I would request the panelists to answer this question. Whoever wants to volunteer. Mr. Jabir or Mr. Karan, if anybody, any of the panelists would like to answer this question.
Okay. Okay. May I?
Yes, please.
Just go ahead. Okay. So the question is about there's a big gap between policymakers and the ground level workers, like rural people or in any context, people on ground. And there is another gap, that is economic status of rich and poor is also increasing in the trend. Okay, so there are two questions that has been mixed here. One is the economic inequality that persists in the nation, and another is the planning inefficiency that persists. As I had already discussed in the presentation that I had, is we already will have to focus on decentralized planning and planning from bottom up approach. So we have 72nd and 73rd amendment, which gives us the right of autonomy at a rural scale and urban scale. There is a high time that people and communities take a lead into understanding the resources and the impacts that they're getting because of shocks and stresses, I would say, they're getting because of climate change. Now, this would only happen with the active participation from both two important stakeholders. One is academia and another is civil society. How can academia help is through conducting and spreading the meaningful researches on the emerging subjects and creating more awareness among the communities, and how the civil society can largely gather consensus, facilitate the flow of information to all the strata of society, so that people become more and more aware. There is a lot of information that is there available in open domain when it comes to when we talk about government's data sharing policy. There is a lot of information that is available, but it is not be absorbed, or common man will not be able to understand it fully, because most of the informations are designed in a technical form. So there is a need here, is that when civil society can come in, make people understand the information, aware them about the critical situation, so that will facilitate the decentralized planning approach. So that will actually be one of the first step of reducing inequalities, increasing the partnership of different communities into policy making, and hence all this will become the footstones for reducing economic inequality which is there in the society. So I think that is one of the way people we can go about reducing the inequalities in both policy making and economic inequality.
Thank you so much, Karan. That was a very nice explanation and a very good answer to that question. We have a few more questions. If any of the panelists would like to answer those. The next question in the list is, should the ecological education be increased in the context of growing problems of the modern world? So if any panelists would like to answer this question, please go ahead.
Can I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so definitely awareness is important. Most of the time it's like it's not only awareness, it's about awareness of resource, like not only awareness about the emergency or the climate emergency right now. More than that, awareness of the resources, awareness of the strategies from the government or from the policymakers to the people. How can people access those resources? All of that awareness should be done. So I definitely feel that as much as we talk about a lot of climate change problem and environmental disaster or COVID-19 affecting all of that, more than the basic information that this thing is there, climate change is real, we should also give more awareness to how can you, what are the resources you can access to, solve climate change? Because most of the time there are many people who are willing to do a lot of things, but they don't know the right way. They don't know the correct path, so they don't know whom to contact. So awareness of resources and facilities should be made so that people can, come forward and do something, like contribute something at their individual level. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very precise answer that you've given. The next question that I have in the list is, what innovations have been used in recent years to help protect the environment? I would request one of the panelists to try and answer this question.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, please, go ahead, ma'am.
I think what's ironic here is that the more we advance in technology, we realize that what we had been doing all along was good enough. And that's why we're going back to nature-based solutions now. There was a time when we had to, we thought that building seawalls would help with storm surge. Now we realize that it's better to have mangrove forests there to fight and to prevent flooding from storm surges. It's the same with agriculture. I mean, we went from small-time farmers, mechanized, it became monocropping. Everyone started adapting to that. And then now we are back to mixed, we're back to permaculture. But that's what people have been doing all along for centuries. I mean, it's what we call paramba in Kerala. It's a traditional form of farming. It's permaculture farming. So if it's, and even the development of cities, if you're looking at urban design, streets used to be for pedestrians. Then streets started becoming designed for cars, for vehicles, and now you're going back to streets that are being designed for pedestrians and for cyclists. So in a lot of ways, the more that we are advancing, we are going back to what we were. And the technology is also helping us to make better use of the knowledge that we already have. But I think it's important. I'm just going back to one of the questions that you had asked earlier. My mic was on mute. I wanted to answer that about how schools and how educational institutions could help the next generation understand environmental protection and the climate risks better. It should start from, we have something like EVS, environmental science, right from grade 1. It's if you ask me, but I think children should be able to look around and learn, because what the textbook, I don't think they have any real examples in the textbook that has happened in the last 1 year. And for a child who's 6 or 7, something that happened a decade ago or 15 years ago is not going to make much of an impact, but something that happened in the last 2 years will. Someone who has endured flooding or at least read about it in the papers. So it's high time they updated the syllabus in schools. And citizen organizations should be encouraged to team up with school children, not in the form of an internship. Let's not go into that, paid and unpaid internship, but as volunteers, they can do a lot. Whether it's planting trees. I mean, we have here in Kerala, the forest department, they give out saplings to all the school children so they can plant them at home. So that's something that can be done on a very small scale too, And even what I had presented today, rain gardens, that is something that can be done in a neighborhood, and you just need 15 houses to contribute if they want to, fund it on their own, or they can just, if it's a small town, they can contact the municipality there. So it all starts from a it starts from a grassroots level, and it can be done that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very precise answer that you've shared. And let's have one more question before we conclude the webinar. The question is, once an ecosystem is destroyed, can it be revived? I would request one of the panelists to volunteer an answer.
I can attempt. It's not an easy question. I mean,
Right.
because we have different kinds of ecosystems, and it would also certainly depend on the extent of damage that has been done to the ecosystem. And I think we know that natural regeneration or natural revival is always kind of the best way forward. But then there have been attempts to artificially regenerate or revive several ecosystems around the world, even in India. For example, I was involved in one project in Tamil Nadu in Gulf of Mannar, where attempt was to actually regenerate damaged coral reefs and seagrasses through raising seagrasses and coral reefs in artificial frames and actually deploying them physically in the seabed, and then monitoring them closely for several years. And it actually helped the regeneration to a certain extent, but then it's very context specific. So one cannot say that yes or no. It would certainly depend on the type of ecosystem, what kind of damage are we talking about, several other external factors.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Ms. Bhatt. That was a very precise answer. And we have a good inflow of questions, which we can definitely answer. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to Nanoland. We shall be sharing you the email where you can use to posting your questions. Now, I would request Mr. Zarnesh Kanodia to assess this social occasion with his statement of gratitude. And Zarnesh Kanodia actually works as a scientific officer at Nanoland. He's a postgraduate in climate change impacts management from School of Science, Gujarat University. Zarnesh is principally centered around research commonly linked with paleoclimate, biodiversity, and wildlife science. Now I would request Mr. Zarnesh Kanodia to deliver a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. And I, on behalf of Nanoland, in the entire supporting team, extend a very hearty note of thanks to all speakers for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today on imagining and implementing a better future for our beloved world. It was surely an informative and illuminating one. I might want to say thanks to Dr. Rajeshkumar Acharya, Chief Scientific Advisor of Nanoland Limited, for organizing this webinar, which would take research to another level. Dr. Acharya has guided Nanoland and his research group consistently for certain uncommon thoughts, perhaps it be subjective or non-abstract. However, they have consistently opened our mind to think past what everything others can think. I would say thanks to Dr. Acharya in the interest of the relative multitude of our participants. I would like to thank Dr. Acharya, our scientific advisor, Nanoland Incorporation, our first speaker, of course, of the webinar, for delivering exceptional knowledge and climate change and explaining in detail about effects of environmental degradation, types of environmental problems, types of renewable and non-renewable sources, creating a sustainable society, and how we can conserve it sustainably. I would like to extend my appreciation to Ms. Somya Bhatt, advisor at German Development Corporation, GIZ, for conveying such a proactive speech and presentation on approach to planning and implementing of climate change adaptation in rural areas in India. Her essence has set an ideal platform for our speakers to start this webinar on an engaging note. Next, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Mr. Karan Shah, Head Partnership and Outreach, Civitas Sustainability Foundation, for conferring us the information on towards sustainable and resilient lessons from India. Mr. Karan superbly started his presentation clarifying us the idea of scenario of Indian urbanization, resilience, and challenges the poor society of India faces. He further clarified the challenges and options for 21st century. He ended his presentation giving his ideas as a specialist in his space. Further, we are grateful to Ms. Diana Yesuraj, lecturer, Natural and Applied Sciences, University of Dubai. Ms. Diana gave a helpful and significant presentation on how the World Environment Day celebration started across the history. She explained about the Paris Agreement in detail, collaboration, and bridging the gap between the developing countries. Now, I would like to express our sincere thanks to Ms. Anne, adaptation consultant at Kerala, for delivering such a breathtaking presentation on cloudburst resilience. She has elaborated well about impacts of cloudburst on our society, micro-bioretention basins. Lastly, I would express my gratitude to Mr. Jabir for delivering such a magnificent presentation on a brief state of environment in Zanzibar. He has clearly explained reasons for environmental degradation, environmental issues Zanzibar is facing. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record a hearty thanks to the LT College of Engineering, Xavier's Research Foundation, Institute of Science, Nirma University, and Gujarat Technological University, who have helped us this webinar in a success. In the end, I would like to thank our participants who have patiently been a good audience all through the webinar, and without whom this online webinar would not have been possible. Much appreciated a lot, everyone. Taking everything into account, I should thank all of the individuals who have upheld us directly or indirectly in the smooth working of this webinar till the end. We want to have an especially effective and favorable online webinar in future too. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Zarnesh. Thanks a lot. In closing, I wish to offer my thanks to everyone among the panelists as well as participants for their full cooperation. It offers me an opportunity to celebrate our achievement in seeking excellence in the field of climate science. It is a great celebration that we are doing here, World Environment Day, which is a very, very important thing to our Earth. We are privileged to have in participation such recognized specialists as well as observers, having such resourceful and knowledgeable researchers who have assisted us with acquiring such significant bits of knowledge about our climate. With this, we summarize our meeting and wish everybody to remain at home, stay safe. Much thanks to all of you for going along with us, ladies and gentlemen. We conclude this webinar now. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Have a great day.
Thank you.